Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this CNBC Africa panel, and a very special panel, of course, focusing on digitization and how it is transforming the mining industry. My name is Fifi Peters, and that is the question, right? To digitize or not to digitize. But I do lie, because that is no longer the ultimate question. COVID-19 has forced all industries to rapidly adopt new technologies under lockdowns that showed it was possible to operate remotely. The pandemic also revealed what we've all known for some time, that digitization can transform industries, it can reduce costs and improve business productivity. In this panel, experts will examine the current situation around digitization of mines in Africa, answer why growth optimization is important, and also reveal what we can expect from the future of mines. And of course, we welcome feedback and engagement from yourselves as our viewers and our online audience. Feel free to send through your questions and we'll answer as many as time does allow. But first, let me introduce you to your panelists.
Jonas Corrali, Head of Bosch Mining Solutions. Alex Finn, Head of Technology and Innovation at Sibanye-Stillwater. Andrew Lane, Leader of Energy, Resources and Industrials at Deloitte Africa. Martin Priest, Executive Vice President at Goldfields. Pleasure Mnisi, Manager Mining at Exaro Resources.
Andrew, I would like to begin with you and just ask you to set the context and the scene of Africa's mining sector right now as it stands. We have been witnessing the income statements and the balance sheets of many mining companies shining in all forms of glory as a result of commodity prices that have worked well in their favor. But are things that great currently? And if there are any pressure points, perhaps if you could let us know where those are. Andrew.
So thanks, Fifi. Look, my perspective is that the mining industry in Africa has actually come through the COVID thing quite well. You know, they were only shut down for a short while at the beginning of the first shutdown, and then most of the mines were operating pretty quickly thereafter. I think, in my view, most of the major mining companies are kind of within 10% of their volume targets. If you look at some of the results that have been reported recently and some of the guidance that's been given, they're all doing very, very well. You know, particularly the gold guys have been doing spectacularly well. I think a lot of it is to do with price, as you rightly point out. So I think there has been a bit of an advantage from the price, and I think, as always, the industry is always looking to improve underlying operating performance, because the price often disguises some of those things. But I think the short answer is that the industry's actually in surprisingly good shape at the moment.
But of course, the conversations that I imagine all boardrooms are having is how to forge ahead and also be future fit. And Jonas, perhaps you can come in here and just give us a sense of the kind of demand that you have seen from clients there at Bosch regarding, embracing a lot more technologies in the mining processes.
Yes, especially in the last couple of months, we see a very high demand for some of our solutions, especially the ones that you can monitor your operation outside the plant, doing conditioning monitoring. One of them is our smart conveyor, where we monitor idle rollers on the conveyor belt 24/7, and we can generate reports online, so then you don't have to do that or to go inside the mine to inspect the whole conveyor and so on. So all this demand for new technologies are really, I would say, coming in a good speed, I would say. I also think that in terms of the reduction of output due to the COVID situation last year, I think all the mining operations will chase the recovery of the output, and to recover this output, they have to increase the productivity. And of course, they will take advantage on the new technologies that are coming to do so. So that's why I think the pandemic showed to us a lot of opportunities, not only for the mining business, but also for the technology providers to help them really to increase that production. And if the prices on the commodity side is high, the demand is, I'd say, under control, and you can increase your output, I think is the ideal word for everybody. Yeah?
I think so, but we'll hear from the miners themselves right now. So a pleasure if I can come to you. Jonas throwing in a point there saying that perhaps technology is going to be used to leapfrog some productivity gaps that were left as a result of COVID-19 impacting how much you could produce at any given point in time. But give us the experience of what has happened at Exxaro in terms of the rate of adoption of technologies, particularly during the past 11 months, as in fact, the entire world rather, has been under lockdown from the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Fifi. I think in Exxaro, we were lucky enough because we were early adopters. I think around about 2016, we started on a digital transformation journey. And what it has allowed us to do is to install a lot of infrastructure systems in place. We therefore developed a strategy or a system that we could put in place that would enable our operations to be visualized remotely. And secondly, we also implemented what we call integrated operation centers. And things like data science, where we could analyze certain outcomes from the different operations remotely. So when the pandemic hit, it was more or less a fortunate situation for us because we would have been able to work remotely and be able to understand what the assets are doing, analyze our productivity, and also understand our resources from afar. Just to give you a practical example, one of our Belfast mines is situated in Belfast, actually has a digital twin. What a digital twin allows us to do is to have a mirror of the entire mine and be able to establish what-if scenarios and be able to see the outcome of the mine remotely, and also make decisions that are not normal, and also predict certain things that could happen. As my colleague was also saying, to look at some of the failures that could happen to equipment and predict the potential outcome or productivity outcome from that. So certainly for Exxaro, it has accelerated the adoption of technology, and it has also highlighted some of the things that were also not really that clear. For example, in the mining industry, it's very difficult for people to trust information coming from digital platforms. So what the pandemic did, it actually forced people to adopt those digital platforms and believe that data, and the data that was not quite clear to actually rectify that data. And so far, I think we heading in a very productive year compared to last year, and one would have expected that 2020 for Exxaro would have been a less profitable year, but looking to our performance, it's something to be really proud of, mainly due to the contribution of our technology adoption at Exxaro.
Mm-hmm. I'll come back to you on that one, and just particularly as to why it's difficult, or it has historically been difficult for the mining industry to really trust some of the data coming from the digital lines. But Alex, to bring you in here right now, Andrew, kicked off by saying that it's been a great year for many mining companies, particularly those that operate in the gold mining space, which Sibanye-Stillwater does have exposure to. We've seen your numbers come out today. I think headline earnings per share up over 2,000% or so. Incredible. But as we're talking about digitization and the rate of adoption, so for Exxaro, they say they were early movers. For Sibanye-Stillwater, what was the case? And have you found also that the pandemic has accelerated the rate of use of technological processes in your mines?
Thanks, Fifi. I think, very similar experiences Exxaro had. We didn't identify any shortfalls per se in terms of our digital infrastructure. We also spent a lot of time since 2015, 2016 investing in foundational technology supporting our broader digital strategy. And what COVID did was force us to just turn it on slightly quicker than we would have. It enabled us to demobilize and then remobilize in excess of 80,000 people, which I think is a phenomenal achievement, and I think everyone would agree to that. But really, we did lean heavily on digital. We've made significant moves in terms of the way in which we operate. So we've adopted a work from home philosophy for a large component of our organization, specifically in the support services and the corporate functions. That's permanent, so I'm working from home. I don't think I'll go back any time soon, but also everything that we'd invested in for the last sort of 4 to 5 years really came into play, understanding the trends remotely, being able to react to our production profiles appropriately, and then also being able to engage, which I think was incredibly important. COVID was extremely isolating. I think everyone will agree. Being put in your house on your own for several weeks at a time it really put a lot of pressure on our employees. What we were able to do was extend platforms to them to bring them closer to home. So if anything, we are, I guess, closer to the rest of the organization despite being very far away from them. It's definitely inspired a new appetite for digital. We've also adopted a digital-first philosophy as a business, and that for us is not only a company that adopts digital technologies, but also addresses the culture, the structures and the processes that support digital adoption. So it's less about the technology for us. It's more about how we get people to start living a digital life and pursuing the concept of a digital-first organization. So COVID has been strangely beneficial in that sense. It's obviously a horrible thing to happen globally, but we have seen some significant adoption improvements as a result of the impact of COVID-19.
Martin, some opening remarks from yourself as well, giving the experience there at Goldfields, another gold miner to come out with results today. And I imagine that your shareholders are really smiling at that dividend that was awarded to them as a result. But the process of digital adoption at Goldfields, Alex was talking about the fact that he might not even go to the office. So whereas for a non-miner like myself, I just wonder, how does that trickle down to the mine worker and the mining industry at large, which seems sort of very labor intensive? Are we talking about digitization just at the back end and the administrative parts of the mining operations here, or is it something that can happen across the entire value chain? Perhaps if you can reflect on those thoughts as you describe the digitization process at Goldfields in the past year.
Thanks, Fifi. I certainly think it's not a decision that's been triggered by COVID. It can't be a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that we've been driving very hard for the last 3.5 years. And, I think the real value doesn't sit at the back end of the business. The real value of digitization sits at the front end of the business, where we produce gold, not where we pay invoices and salaries. We are focusing on our support functions, but our strategy encompasses all functions. Really the front end is where we can drive value. As you know, South Deep is a mechanized mine, so it certainly offers us a lot of opportunities. With deep level mining, you lose a lot of time with shift changes. And one of our big objectives is we can lose up to 8 hours a day with the 2 shift changes. Is how do we capture that time? So in the past 2 years, we operating our rock breakers from surface. We've got load all dumpers operating from surface now, and we can utilize that window. So this is certainly not a knee-jerk reaction to COVID. It's part of a very clearly laid out strategy. And I think what COVID has done, it's helped accelerate it, as Pleasure and Alex has said. And it's most probably helped some of the non-believers become believers.
I'd just like to throw a couple of themes out there pertaining to your sector and also the role that technology can play. And the first one I'd like to draw up is sustainability. And Andrew, if you can just kick this one and help us understand to what degree can these technologies that are being embraced by the sector help towards areas like sustainability and safe and responsible mining, particularly as the mining industry is one of those that are seen as one of the more higher carbon emitters. So the role that technology can play in this space as we all try to move towards carbon neutrality at a rapid pace.
So look, I think, you mentioned a couple of topics there. I think if one was to stop briefly on the safety element of it, I think safety it's been a big issue in the mining industry for many, many years. And I think while we've been steadily improving as an industry over the years, we haven't yet solved the problem. I think that the real power that the technology brings in the safety world is the ability to predict. If you have enough data and a big enough database and enough history and a broad enough source of data sources, you can start to predict unsafe situations, unsafe people and unsafe workplaces, and try and keep the two apart. So I think that's the real game changer in terms of safety. I think when you start to talk more broadly about sustainability and if I'm to put a social lens on that to start with, I think Alex mentioned the ability to engage with employees. I think the ability to engage with stakeholders and communities and really get to a granular understanding of what people are up to and how they're thinking outside the gate. If you can engage with your labor force, I think that really does advance your community impact, your ability to use digital technologies to onboard and nurture emerging suppliers, to broaden your supply base. And then I think, there are some very specific technologies that go into the whole decarbonisation thing in terms of reducing emissions, changing fuel sources. I mean, the simple and obvious one is the move towards electrification and away from diesel in most of the mines. So yeah, they're just a couple of thoughts on those.
All right, so let me go with your flow and let us zero in then on safety and how technologies can improve the safety ratio of many mining companies. And Jonas, perhaps just a reflection of what technologies are being developed or are out there in the market that can enhance the safety for mine workers.
Sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, there are a lot of technology available on the market. The question is which kind of pain we would like to solve, or and to solve that pain, which is the most I'd say applicable solution or technology for that. So I see, if you look the mining operation from pit to port, I see, of course, on the pit side, in future, the biomining playing a very important role. From pit to port, I see blockchain also coming with a very important technology to also control and make the mining more traceable, or the minerals more traceable. But all in all, I think exactly where Bosch is positioning, that is on we call AIoT, so artificial intelligence plus Internet of Things. We're bringing both together. I think this is really a game changer that we can apply, also looking to pit to port. And there's a huge and a wide opportunities to cover or to solve problems with those technologies. And of course, together with that, with the cloud computing, also it's just enhance those technology to work even better. So that's I think, technology view of the solutions available for the mining environment.
A pleasure. I mean, one thing that I think always comes out quite strongly whenever Exxaro delivers its numbers is just how well you have been able to achieve in the score of safety. In fact, most of the times we read your numbers as financial journalists, it's that safety record that's always listed at the top of the line. So perhaps just a reflection on what has worked for the group, and if there is room to further increase investments of technologies that can further improve or sustain your safety levels at this current level.
No, certainly. I think we've done very well as a company. We almost 3 years without any fatality, touch wood. And certainly it's a very difficult record to achieve within the mining industry. But certain technologies stood out for us. But one thing that really stood out the most for us is the connected worker. So what it means by a connected worker is you are able to trace movement of each and every employee within the operations. So this is how mining is structured. Mining has got rules and regulation governing areas that certain people with certain trade tests or certain qualities or certain qualifications can go to. For instance, the blasting area or the blasting radius when a blast is about to take place. So with a connected worker, things like that could easily result into a fatality, we are able to track it and be able to eliminate it before it even happens. Secondly, if you look at underground, one of the critical things underground is about ventilation. So with the technology that we implemented, we can monitor the amount of ventilation or the meters per second of airflow underground accurately so that it safeguards the health and the breathing of the operators underground. Yes, it has been done, but what technology brings to the table is also the element of cost savings within complying to the labor regulations around safety underground. What I mean by that is instead of just pumping air, costing a lot of electricity, just because you have to do it as a regulatory requirement, you're now able to control exactly to the T where you need to direct the flow, where the people are, increase based on the number of people, and be able to control all of that. The other factor that is also coming through that we're busy working on and looking into the future, it's also around the continuous miner. A lot of people ask the question, what is a continuous miner? So a continuous miner is an automatic machine that sits underground, automatically cuts the code and puts it on the conveyor belt up into the plant where it gets processed. So what happens traditionally is that you would have an operator sitting on the cab operating that particular continuous miner. But when you have a fall of ground, it resulted immediately into a fatality. But through implementation of technology and remote operations, you are able to operate those continuous miners from surface and using technology, sensors, as the colleagues have also mentioned earlier, to be able to predict and check where the mine is supposed to go, the angles in which it's supposed to turn. So all of those things combined together adds to a beautiful safety record that we've seen.
Right, and just a reflection, if I can ask, from Alex and Martin on this issue of safety before we move on, because obviously on the other side of that coin, it does lie rather the behavior of the mine worker as well in ensuring that the safety records are held at comfortable levels. And Alex, perhaps if you can just talk to us about that and the role that technology can play or has played in improving how mine workers conduct themselves underground and play a role in also ensuring that safety stays at acceptable levels.
Thanks, Vivi. I think maybe it's just important to contextualize our operations compared to that of Goldfields and Exxaro. So we are predominantly conventional mining operations, which means we've got a very large labor force and not a lot of mechanization where we are. We don't foresee there being a lot of mechanization in the near future. So really what we've had to do is focus our digital strategy, not on the automation side of things, but more on how do we identify areas in the organization that we can improve. So thematically, we break our digital efforts up from a safety perspective into two sort of broad categories. First being is understand. What can we implement that helps us understand specific trends, get more granularity on data, identify areas of concern, and then inform decision-making, and then post that decision-making, technologies that can help us expedite that. I think in terms of safety, two examples I can think of, and one that seems relatively abstract, is taking sort of leading and lagging indicators and employee data that we extract off systems that we have to implement by law, not necessarily things that we had in place. It's maximizing the value of that. But using it to identify where we have ambiguity in standard operating procedures, and then using that to inform changes in training material. So that's developing the understanding of the problem through that set of technology, then to expedite that using different digital mediums to deliver that training material in a way that will maximize retention, but also expedite the delivery. So you don't have to spend 5 days learning a certain thing if it only takes 30 minutes through video. And that would then be, using things like augmented reality or virtual reality to enhance our training on that side. We've also applied extremely rudimentary analysis to leading and lagging indicators to tailor bespoke interventions. Not a lot of them I would classify as digital in the grand sense of the word that everyone's throwing around now. It is extremely basic, but I think it's important to note that when it comes to digital, it should be less about the technology, more about your objective. I think one of the problems we have in the market is we hear a lot about bespoke implementations of specific types of technology. It's not necessarily tailored for the solution, nor is the objective that relevant. So we've seen very significant benefit out of very basic tools. We've also seen insignificant benefit out of extremely complex tools. But essentially, safety being a huge priority, we have a different focus in terms of what we need to zero in on, that being behavior, because we don't have machines that we can sort of modify to improve. We really need to focus on the 80,000+ people that we employ to make sure that they're making the right decisions, but also that they're appropriately enabled to do the jobs through the requisite training, as well as all the various tools that we need to supply. And we use digital methods just to identify those. The implementation is still relatively practical, but it has added significant value.
And Martin, perhaps just a comment from you here in terms of the role that technology is playing and the role that you envision it will play in improving the safety records there at Goldfields.
Our point of departure with technology is safety. That's our first priority, and we're looking at safer, cleaner, smarter mines. That's our strap line. And I think our interventions around the safety space, we've looked at where we hurt people, and we're targeting that. So the sort of two things, the two big things, or the three big things are removing people from the face. So that's deployment of newer and modern technology that can operate semi-autonomously and autonomously, that takes people away from the face where there's potentially rock bursts, falls of ground. I think the second one is about how do we monitor environmental conditions. We're all aware of the risk of silicosis, so we're busy rolling out live monitoring of environmental conditions in terms of dust, heat, so that we can get people out of areas that are potentially risky. And then I think the third one, and also, it's the biggest injury causer across the globe, is man-machine interface with the big mobile machines we run underground. And we're busy rolling out collision avoidance level 9, where our people will have wearables, our machines will have the technology on board that will guide them, but also stop them and prevent interaction between machine and machine, between man and machine, without operator intervention. So those are some of the big issues that we are driving and rolling out right now. And just dealing with those is going to have a dramatic impact on our safety performance.
I just also wanted to pick up on the point that Pleasure did mention about the continuous mine worker there at Exxaro. It's no longer a man but a machine, and I just want to understand. I mean, we've been talking about the concern of robots taking over jobs here, and I want to know if this concern is founded in the mining sector from where you are sitting, and perhaps Andrew, if you can just talk to us as Deloitte, with the research that you're seeing, how is embracing technology and digitalization likely to impact on the labor landscape in the sector going forward?
So look, I think that, fundamentally, when you change these technologies, the path is as much about people as it is about the technology. So inevitably work changes. And when the work is changing, the nature of your workforce changes. And I think there's a certain inevitability about this. I don't think that the industry has a choice about whether to adopt these technologies or not. We're a global industry. We're exposed to global commodity markets. The industry will modernize in one way or another, whether we like it or not. And that does impact the nature of the workforce. It doesn't necessarily mean a negative impact. And you can think about this in a number of ways. You can think about it at a macro level and say, well, net, we create a few jobs upstream, we create a few more jobs in the technology sectors, we might lose a few jobs in mining, it might balance out. That's all well and good. It doesn't help the fact that in a community around a mine, there will always be people who can't make the transition. Obviously, the intent is to try to help as many people across the transition as possible. Mm-hmm. But there will always be people that may not be able to make that transition. And I think the way to think about this is not to think about the disadvantage that technology is creating for those people. I think one needs to think creatively and say, well, if you flip the discussion over the other way around and say you bring broadband internet into these communities, what opportunities does that raise? How can you use technology to create alternative opportunities for people to earn livelihoods, abilities for them to use technology to educate themselves, to have access to markets, to develop new businesses, to do different things. So I think that while at face value, it may look like a threat to jobs and certain people might find it uncomfortable, I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity there. And if one looks forward rather than backwards, I think ultimately the impact of technology will create huge disruption, but it doesn't necessarily need to create disadvantage at a macro level.
Jonas, perhaps if you can help us understand here the role that Bosch Africa is playing or plans to play in localizing some of these solutions that you're currently offering to clients here on the continent. I mean, to what degree, or is there room for some of these solutions or more of these solutions to be manufactured here on African soil, or some of the supplies that go into it to be sourced and procured from the continent?
Yes, Fifi, I can say that Bosch really support the localization here in Africa, especially in South Africa, where we are based. In our digital transformation, we are always looking to the economy, the impact we have in the economy, the ecology, and also the society. So, and then here is not different. So bringing the same strategy and affecting those positively, those pillars, we see localization a very important topic for us. In one of our solutions, for example, we work with a software local company here to do our smart inspections. So any inspection that you'd like to digitalize in the mining sector, we do with a partnership with a local company here. We also in all the installations or the solutions we have on site, we are always pushing local companies to work with us. Recently, we did our first major installation here in Africa for our smart conveyor, and this local company now is together with us to be trained to know about artificial intelligence. So it's a way also to bring our legacy, our Bosch legacy, to the communities close to the mining sectors, and in terms of produce nowadays, we just for us it's just a discussion about demand. If we have enough demand to produce, especially our sensors here in South Africa, we are very happy to do so. We have a manufacturing site here in Brits, able to produce some electronics as well. So we are very, I would say, prepared, and we support a lot the localization aspects here in South Africa. So we are really good to go on that way.
Without speaking about 5G and the broadband and the communication infrastructure that enables us to embrace more digital technologies in our business and our way of life. And Pleasure, your turn is up. In terms of a question that has come from the audience, how does the communication infrastructure impact the stability or availability of the digital solutions that you are using here? And just speaking specifically to the broadband telecoms and the monitoring devices that you would need to use continuously underground.
Certainly, I think I did allude earlier that we started our journey in 2016, and at the time what happened is we identified about 592 solutions that we could implement across our different operations. So when we embarked on that journey, we thought that it would be easy because we've got a technical solution or technology solution we could just implement. But soon we realized that we couldn't go far unless we have basic infrastructure. So infrastructure for underground has been the availability of Wi-Fi. And at first we went into looking at different technologies that we can use to get Wi-Fi underground. But as technology developed, I think within a year or so, we discovered other ways of communication or technologies where actually you can use the telecoms that is underground to transmit information between equipment. So as the equipment passes each other, they can pass certain equipments that you're looking for about the cycle time, about the fill factors, and whatever details that you're looking for. So what it has forced us to do is to basically think outside the box in terms of what network connectivity is all about. For our surface, it has been also a challenge as well, where we struggle to really connect, especially if you consider a mine like Grootegeluk, a massive, third largest open cast coal mine in the world with thousands and thousands of kilometers. So if you look at connectivity at that space, we also struggled to connect with our drills, with our machines that were at the pit. But soon we realized that we can actually use our, what we call the cell phone networks that are actually there to connect to some of those devices. So as we develop, as we mature, we discover other ways of connectivity that are not necessarily based in terms of the 5Gs or the 3G or the typical network that you get. In the last example around our network was also an instance where we partnered with one of the startups, a small company that has a groundbreaking LTE network, where they wanted to try out certain things. We worked together with them. We went to visit certain countries like India, where the technology on open cast is much more advanced. And together, through the alterations and working together on that network, we're able to develop a 5G kind of network that was able to connect all our equipment within the Lupan operations, similar to just 5G, if not better.
And Alex, perhaps if you also reflect on this subject of connectivity and the network infrastructure, how do you think also that the use of digitalization can deal with some illegal mining there that does tend to happen and does tend to cause a lot of disruption to processes?
It's a great question. I think interestingly enough, I mean, we've got a lot of utilities that flow underground, so compressed air, electricity, water, pumping water up to surface, which you can use to an extent as a proxy for what's going on the ground. So we should expect certain utilities to run at certain times, but if we see an increase in certain consumption rates at times where you shouldn't see any compressed air usage, for example, you can roughly identify that there may be either a leak or an illegal mining problem on that particular level. We're also looking into concept Pleasure mentioned earlier, the connected worker, to see how we can identify where people have been and whether or not they're clocking out at the right time. So getting a good idea of who should be underground and when is also very important. We've used a lot of digital tools to control the in and outflow of people into our operations. They are extremely complex, so multiple shaft complexes with various ingress and egress areas which we have to control, but we're using very complex AI and surveillance mechanisms to manage that. Everyone is on biometrics. There's several points of entry before you actually get underground. So essentially, we've got quite a substantial subset of technology that focuses on security and employee wellness. Even though that might not sound completely relatable to illegal mining, it does have its applications in terms of understanding who should and shouldn't be where they are. And then again, back to the utilities, just making sure that we monitor what's going in is supposed to be going in, what's coming out is supposed to be coming out. And then also your standard kind of security measures to monitor areas that you can. I think importantly, and to the previous question, we are quite limited from an infrastructure perspective. Everything is underground. We've got massive mines. We're mining at the extremities of the ore bodies in many cases, which means we've got hundreds of kilometers of tunnels to equip, so we can't really filter in or proliferate the type of infrastructure that would give you a very dense monitoring system. But there are, to my point previously on utilities, proxies which we can use to identify areas in the mine that might be subject to illegal mining. But it is quite complex at this point in time for us. Solving the infrastructure problem is very, very difficult in the context of deep-level tabular mining.
Another question that has come through, Martin, which I'm hoping that you will be able to tackle. How is digitalization impacting on the value chain of mining and the mineral processing sectors and subsectors in particular?
I think what is critical with that is joined up processes. I think we've sort of well renowned historically for working in silos, and what we're doing now with technology is able to connect firstly with the underground mining value chain, connecting processes to each other in real time. But I think more importantly then through our shaft systems and into the process plants. And as we get more and more granularity on this, I heard pleasure, or I think it was Andrew talking about mine to mill earlier. You should be able to predict from a blast underground how many kilograms of gold are going to come out, so many hours later in the process. So certainly it's going to help us do our reconciliations, have a better understanding of exactly what's happening throughout the value chain, and I think eliminate the wastage that happens between the different parts of a value chain that act independently rather than as collectively.
I'd just like to perhaps hone in on the challenges of accelerating the current rates of adoption of technology even further to ensure that our mining sector remains competitive. And Andrew, again back to you on the challenges to digitalization on the continent, be it regulatory, be it perhaps resistance from labor. Where do you see some of the pressure points coming in here?
So I think, COVID has actually done us a bit of a favor when it comes to this. I think that historically, probably the biggest challenge has been people. And I think we often think about this digitization journey as being a technology story, and it's only half a technology story. The other half is a people story. And I think that historically, this is not an industry which has adopted innovation particularly quickly. And I think what's happened in COVID is suddenly the future has come a whole lot closer. And things that we were thinking about and talking about as being in the future are now real, and circumstances have forced us to face up to them and make them work. So I think that challenge is largely kind of falling away. I think as you look further up the continent and into some of the more remote areas, I think infrastructure, power, telecoms, stuff like that starts to become a problem. And then I think there are practicalities that some of the panelists have mentioned around, some of these mines are very old, very deep, and massive in extent, and hard to give them sort of blanket dense coverage. But I think the technology tools are there. The rate of advance and the rate of innovation is speeding up. I think the adoption by people is falling into place. So I think the remaining challenges are really the practicalities.
And Jonas, just for you, I think the perspective, of course, would be the challenge of doing more on the continent and supplying more of your solutions, your digital solutions in the space. You alluded to the fact that you were ready to do more. I guess my question is, why aren't you?
Fifi, I believe that it's a normal journey. So I think especially from the last years, and if I walk with the mining shoes and see a lot of big companies coming with new solutions, startups with demo, also with some prototypes, pushing for those implementations and so on. And I think Andrew really touched an important topic, which is the human point or human effect on that. So people have to understand this journey, have to understand what exactly they would like to use on the mining side, which technology suits to their problems. And based on that, if you as a technology provider walk together with your customer in your journey to build up this trust and build up this foundation on the human level. I think the implementation of the technology itself will come along, so we know that the industry is quite conservative. We know there are a lot of offer on the market, but it's part of our job to really try to go this journey together, trying to not only convince but show the benefits on what you have. And as soon as they are comfortable with the whole purpose of your solution, it's just a matter of time to you to spread your solutions across the continent, and that's exactly what I'm seeing right now. So we started our division here in 2019. Since then, we've been discussing a lot of projects with the mining houses and why our solutions can fit better to the others. And just now, after one year and a half, more or less, or almost 2 years, minus the COVID situation, we can see that they are really adopting really fast, much more faster than I thought in the middle of last year. So I think now we are in the right moment and in the right traction, just not for the mining to increase the digitalization inside their operation, but also Bosch as a service provider to support them to do so. So I think we are in the right moment, in the right place.
A pleasure. As you reflect on the challenges to digitalization, something that you have emphasized that Exxaro has undergone or has been on this road for some time. So as you reflect on the challenges of doing more, perhaps also if you could just answer a question that has come from the audience as well, in terms of the responsibility of the C-suite to educate and inform miners of the various technologies that you do or you plan to embrace in your mines. So your responsibility at Exxaro that you took when you introduced these continuous mine workers, reflect on that for us, if you will.
Thank you. Look, I think one thing that we need to acknowledge is that technology will forever change faster than people change. So our responsibility as leaders or executives is to take our people along. I like what Lane said earlier, to say technology, a lot of people tend to think so much about the technology itself, but it's more about people. One thing that we've seen within Exxaro is that once it helps solve a problem, people are quicker to adopt. Secondly, if people are part and parcel of the development, they are quicker to adopt into that technology. Thirdly, it's also about demystifying what we call, because often enough people think of digital and confusing it with automation. Those are two different things. And there's still a lot of education that still needs to be done around that subject, where people understand what digitalization is all about. Think about your navigation. If I had to navigate myself to Sentin, that's more digital than automation because I still have to drive my car. But the digital collection of data from the road, from the other cars, and so forth, allows me to consistently make the optimal route decision to get there. That is more or less like digitalization. So we had to get that information or that education to our people on the floor, including the unions and also the local communities, because they were the main beneficiaries of those employment within the sector. So internally, we also looked within the people, where they also interpreted our digital transformation journey as more automation, where you're putting robots taking away jobs. But sadly, there's no evidence within the mining industry that we've retrenched because of deployment of digital skills and so forth. So what we have done as Exxaro, we focus on data analytics, where we've upskilled our internal people. We look at talent, we look at people with appetite for those digital skills and data science skills, and we have upgraded those skills. Secondly, we also partnered with our OEMs. They've got a lot of technology. The challenge with the OEMs is they lack people to partner with deploy some of the innovative solutions that they have. But we became much more transparent to our unions and also our people in terms of partnering with those OEMs to be able to transfer those skills and show them what technologies exist within our equipment to unlock the value. Other things that I may also touch on is also around the qualities. One of the biggest challenges, and I think my fellow miners would agree here, the reason why we mine is to get the ore and to get the best ore at the best quality grades. If you talk to a quality controller, you talk to a process controller, and you tell them this technology will make your process control so easy that you'll be able to achieve your targets or your goals in terms of the best ore qualities that you want, usually it becomes easy to adopt. So those are some of the tactics that I think Exxaro used and focused mainly on training and development.
Agreed, and Pleasure, you are right in terms of the confusion sometimes that arises from what digitalization is and what automation is, and perhaps us in the media have got a big responsibility to first of all understand, as Alex made me wiser in the preparation for this panel, but also to communicate that to my fellow mine workers a lot better. But gentlemen, we are fast running out of time. But yeah, time flies, I suppose, when you're having a great conversation. So I would like to ask everyone just to reflect on their closing remarks and where they see the mining sector in the future as we are discussing. And Alex, just a closing remark from you as you reflect on mining going forward. Perhaps you want to throw in a bit of challenges there and even cite opportunities.
I'll try and bundle them together for the sake of time. No, I think the problem is a lot of people aren't understanding how much investment and time we've actually spent on digital, but getting the foundational elements right. I think we're also spending a lot of time, to Pleasure's point, building the capability within the organization to adopt digital. And it's exciting. I think Andrew mentioned we're kind of there with COVID. Everyone's inspired to be, digitally savvy, but now you're handing over an extremely abstract technological area to some very specific skills and expecting them just to understand why it works or why it doesn't work. And that's just not going to, it's not going to work in terms of the adoption process. So what we do, as opposed to educating about, we educate people on how to find out about. So what are the tools you need to put in place to correctly assess a specific type of technology within the context of your operation, and make sure that you implement it to the extent that it actually adds value, and cut out the 95% of stuff that's coming through on a daily basis, which really just muddies the waters. I think in terms of investment in mining and digitalization in particular, what you are likely to see is probably a lot more adoption coming through in the media. Not that it hasn't been there in the past, it's just the things that we'll be doing from now on will be a lot more marketable, the things that people want to hear, the kind of technology that doesn't make the average person glaze over when they read about it. And I think just in the context of where we are from a commodity cycle perspective, we're likely to see some uptick in investment in that space. So I'm fairly certain we'll see almost orders of magnitude more coming out of the mining sector in terms of good news stories, and then also stories of value. I think, again, the problem with this particular technology theme is it's oversold in the media, and all the hard work that the Pleasures and the Martins and the Andrews and the Jonases are doing in the world is actually undersold, in the sense that you've got to do, 99% of the stuff remains under the radar. It's the 1% of stuff you put out to the market. So not much more is going to change from my perspective in terms of our commitment to digitalization as it hasn't over the last 3 to 4 years. Okay. The only difference you will see is possibly more investment and possibly more marketing around some of the successes that come out of that foundational investment that we made in the past.
Martin, your closing remarks, and I don't know if we've done this panel injustice by not mentioning Eskom and the power issue, or if the fact that now mining companies will be allowed to procure their own power kind of changes that game.
We're very excited about that in terms of power. We're busy licensing a 40 megawatt plant, and we're hoping to get good news of that soon. That's certainly a key enabler. I think related to this discussion, the other panelists have touched on it. It's all about the people. It's about how do we make technology visible? How do we make it transparent? How do we develop new and better skills and jobs for our people? And in doing so, build trust. I think my point of departure is we need to build a better future that the whole employee body can be proud of. And I can think of no more exciting time to be involved in the mining industry in South Africa right now.
Andrew and Pleasure and Jonas, I have got 2.5 minutes to split between the three of you. So can you kindly use it well in your closing remarks as we reflect on the future of mining? And Andrew, you can take it away.
So I'd just like to make 3 quick points. I think where we're at in terms of the digitization journey is integration and artificial intelligence. I think that's where we are in our maturity development. I think absolutely the future of work, worker and workplace is what we need to be focusing on. And I like the point about trust. I think re-establishing trust with our labor force, with the people who live outside the gate, with government, with civil society, I think that's a key point right now.
Thank you. Jonas?
Yes, Fifi. So I'm also very optimistic about the future of the mining sector in Africa and South Africa. I would like to just highlight that Bosch is the first major industrial enterprise to be CO2 neutral in 2020. So we also invite the mining houses. We can also support on that area and also look into all of our solutions that we have. The solutions have to be safe, secure, and trustworthy. And based on that, we build up the foundation and the trust together with our customers. And we are highly committed to localization, train our people as well. We're spending 250 million euros in our company to train our people on software, IoT, artificial intelligence, and so on. So I think Bosch is now very well positioned in the mining industry, especially in South Africa and Africa, to make this mining sector thrives.
All right. Thank you. Pleasure, I'm sorry, you got the short end of the stick here, and you only have 30 seconds for your final remarks.
No, that's fine. I think our top 3 as Exxaro is the digital twins investment, mineral resource integration investment, and lastly, autonomous operations. But I would like to conscientize people. Digital transformation also fail, and they fail mainly because people don't know where to start, how to unlock value, and they don't change the culture properly. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for leaving us on a point in which the follow-up conversation is definitely needed on how we can ensure that that failure rate is minimized. Pleasure. But thank you so much to the audience members. I know that there was a few questions that were not answered, and I apologize for that, but unfortunately we did run out of time. Hopefully you can ask away at the next discussion that we do have on this particular conversation. I'd like to thank my panelists for their time this afternoon and for driving a very important topic. But from myself, Fifi Peters, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.